feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Wednesday morning. It's April 2nd after the Wolves' double overtime win against the Denver Nuggets in Denver on Tuesday night. It was the 24th time these two teams have played each other over the last 3 seasons. I think I've been at every one of those games. Every game has been an awesome basketball game, kind of no matter who wins. Obviously, we know the Wolves side of it, but even some of the times when Denver has won, it's been an incredible Jokic game, right? Incredible Murray, whatever it might be. The Wolves have obviously been winning these games lately, but regardless of result, this matchup is always electric. I think, like, case in point is that this isn't even the best game that these two teams have played against each other in the last year, because Game 7 happened last season. It's been a wild start to the week. Brawl on Sunday, suspensions on Monday. That game last night, Tuesday. The Wolves now officially have new owners this morning. It's a lot, but we're going to do what we do on this podcast and focus on the basketball. I got Britt Robson from Min Post here with me to get the last night part of it. I don't know, man. You cover this team for 35 years. That one's got to be up there, right?
Oh,
just
yeah,
in terms of games.
It's, it kind of reminds me of some of the games that KG and the Wolves had against Sacramento when Chris Webber was there and they played well. Because there's obviously stars, but there's also really interesting side people.
Sure.
And, Denver has a really fascinating team, I think. We know them well because, there've been a lot of high-profile games against them recently. And the Wolves as well have a rotating cast of characters. I thought it was really significant that they won last night, despite the fact that Aaron Gordon was still there, because he was such a huge absence in their last game where the Wolves, won rather handily. And I know that obviously Murray and Porter Jr. are also very valuable, as are DDV and Nas for the Wolves. But I thought beating the Nuggets on a night when Jokic was on in many respects and Gordon was playing well. He wasn't optimal Gordon, but he was still playing very well. Mm-hmm. In Denver, when Denver clearly came out with the idea that, it was going to be different this time, was a very, very reassuring win for the Wolves organization, I thought.
It was wild though, man. It was cool. I was saying to you before we started, there's, like, as happens in a double overtime game, there's so many different things that happen, and I don't even know. I mean, recording this right after I wake up after the late game last night. We're trying to cover all of it. I think the best way is to just kind of move through this.
Sure.
Sort of
pick a topic. I'm ready for it.
I want to appeal. I mean, I know Jokic had a 60-point triple-double. Ant was incredible in the clutch. We'll talk about that. But when you talk about specific to this game last night, what changes is the players that are out. And we could talk about Murray and Porter Jr. being out, and that, I think, really fundamentally changes the Wolves' defensive game plan in this. They always put Ant on Jamal Murray, put Jaden McDaniels on Michael Porter Jr., kind of with the idea of, like, all right, Jokic is going to do his thing, but we're going to take away everything else. So that's removed from the game. That's part of it. But then there's the DiVincenzo and Reid part. Absolutely. That is huge. And I think that connects to Nikhil, because while Nikhil finishes the game with the game-winning free throws, all that, he finishes with 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists, leads the team in plus-minus. I noticed it right away when he checked into the game. Nikhil didn't check into the game as the 8th man like he normally does. He checked into the game like the 6th man that he was last night. He was more aggressive offensively from the jump, understood the assignment that it's different tonight. There's no Donte DiVincenzo. There's no Naz Reid. We're a good to mediocre offensive team, and a lot of the guys who are going to come off the bench tonight are not going to be offense first dudes. And Nikhil isn't necessarily an offensive first dude, but he has the most offensive game, I think, of the guys who were who did play last night. I just thought he jumped on an opportunity last night, started at the very beginning of the game. Wolves were off for 6 minutes of the game. Nikhil comes in 6 minutes in, plays the entire 18 minutes to close the first half. And there we go. We got a basketball game again. He's one of my favorite players I've ever covered. from a basketball standpoint. He happens to be a good dude, as you know. You covered him for a while here too, but I really respect the hell out of the way he approaches it as a job and completes the task as a job, and has an ability to be sort of flexible with that. I think he showed that last night, and he really showed some stones too at the end.
We always say that Na is a confidence player, and that has become ingrained into the fiber of who he is. He is far more consistent than he used to be. Yeah, he has some off games. Who doesn't? But the times when he has become reliable, he is clearly the most consistent player in terms of overall performance on the roster. It's not even close. Right. But in addition to that, the idea that he was so willing to take the open jumper and not defer was a noticeable change, and it reflects the circumstances you're talking about. But also just his ability to provide energy, to provide transition defense at a time when they were just awful at it to begin with. It's no secret why he had the best plus minus on the team. The Wolves played their best when he was in the lineup because he was so valuable at both ends. He was hitting shots from all over the court. He was finishing tough. He had a couple of tough N1s at the rim. He hit 3 or 4 threes at crucial circumstances. And it was Mike Conley-esque there at the end where, he does have some pressure lifted off him by the fact he has 3 free throws. And if he makes only 1, it's still overtime. But he didn't hit the rim on either one of those 2 free throws. Those were splashes. Those were curries in our parlance. And so that's the kind of reliability that I thought this game really kind of highlighted something that we all think about is if Na's going to leave, and he's the most logical person to get forced off this roster due to salary at the end of the season. And we say there are capable replacements. And there do seem to be capable replacements, but not replacing.
I had this written down as well, man. I agree 100%.
Jaden Clark is a fine player, and I've raved about him nonstop. But the moment was finally too big for Jaden Clark last night. He tried to do things. He fouled Jokic 3 times. Maybe the first time, maybe the second time. You foul Jokic 3 times going for... You have to realize that Nikola Jokic has probably the best court awareness of any player in the NBA. If you're trying to sneak up on Jokic, you're not going to be successful. Right. And Jokic punked him twice. The third one, debatable as to whether or not that was on Jalen, but it clearly he was not an effective player last night, and it was because for maybe the first time that I've ever seen him do this, he tried to be outside his little scope of what he does. One of the beauties of Jalen Clark is that he knows what he can do, and he does it extremely well, and he keeps it simple. Well, he was a little bit of a reckless gambler, and I understand Jokic was running rampant, and they were doubling with bigs and littles last night, tripling sometimes, and those were not the wrong plays because Jokic wasn't getting the dimes he deserved on his passes to people. But there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. And Jalen Clark was ineffective, which is all to say that it's an interesting juxtaposition on a night when Na gives you exactly what you need. Right. That the guy who everybody kind of says, all right, well, if we lose Na, we have Jalen Clark. And I'm guilty of that too. I do think in the hard reality of the NBA, that's still a distinct possibility. I'm just saying last night shows what you lose if you make that switch. Because Jalen Clark cannot be the kind of guy who can seize the reins of a half-court offense. He can shoot when he's open, but he can't be the kind of guy who is a threat. And so I just feel like I like that. I like that. Like it has been ideology that's been going around as
given that the Wolves are in such a difficult cap situation and probably needing to stay underneath the second apron next season, that it's like, well, there is Jalen Clark and there is Terrence Shannon Jr. And as you said, we've both raved about both players when they played well.
No shade on either guy, right?
No shade on either of them. It's that they are not the same as Nikhil. They have different games, and it's you think about Nikhil and Jalen, and the first thing you might think of is their point of attack defense, their ability to navigate screens, guard the ball, and they are both good at that. What we've learned from Nickeil Alexander-Walker over the 3 years that he's been here, or what we've seen develop, is a more broad game. Like, of course, Nickeil is still to some degree a role player, but he's a role player that can play a lot of different roles. And I just feel like that keeps growing and growing and growing as the opportunity comes, as it did last night. But I mean, I don't say this at all to be like wanting or predicting Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be gone. But man, if it was a normal cap space summer, how does that dude not get well over the mid-level?
How does Denver not basically sell its soul? I mean, what he's done to Murray in some heavy-duty postseason games, he just terrorized Murray a few times. And he would fit in. I mean, if there's a weakness to him, it's that he kind of fits best as an active point guard, or at least combo-ish guard.
Sure.
And having Nikola Jokic run 90% of your offense is just ideal for him.
Right. No,
and having him be a guy who improves that shaky defense, although Denver did really up its game on defense last night. They have been shaky this season. He just fits so many ways, akin to like Kyle Anderson being the ideal Jokic backup center for you in your formulation. I mean, I'm thinking of Nickeil and Christian Brown together on the wings.
Yeah,
I mean,
Bruce Brown. He's Bruce Brown. Exactly. He would be a Bruce Brown replacement for them. It's funny you bring up Kyle Anderson. So, like last summer, Kyle Anderson left in free agency, but it was a sign and trade, and the Wolves got a pick back from Golden State in that. And just to wrap the free agency part of it with Nickeil, I do think we're at the point where it's likely that if he moves, it is through a sign and trade, which means the Wolves will be getting a dividend back out of that. That's if that's the worst case scenario, because the only other way he could just kind of like leave without needing to do that is just the mid-level exception. We wouldn't need to sign and trade him that way.
And I just think
I think he might get more than it. I mean, I do think in a normal economic landscape, he would, given what his play is and the consistency of it, what we saw last night. I mean, there's still Nickeil has played so much. He plays every single game, so we see him a lot. But if you go through his game logs over his time here, he's very rarely been an over like 28-minute a guy ever. That was one of the first games he's ever closed for the Timberwolves there. And whether that opportunity comes in Minnesota or elsewhere, I think he's proven he's the caliber of player who can and maybe should be. Is it the caliber of a closing level player on a good playoff team in the Western Conference? What's the evidence against it? We're not saying he's, somebody don't max him, but like he is, he in today's NBA fits on every team. I think, and the way that this game is being played right now, he's every team could use a player like him. I got here Ant after the game on Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
MVP of the game. He hit big shot after big shot after big shot. At some point, I was like, let's just give the ball to Nickeil, and we all spot up. But yeah, he was incredible tonight, man. He showed that he got, y'all know what that means. Yeah.
Is that kind of what maybe
to kick it to him? Yeah, for sure. He had just made like 3 straight big ones. And when I got past Bron, I was gonna go finish, but it was like 3 people at the rim, so I'm like, it's gonna be a tough finish. And I seen him, and I didn't even know he got fouled. Honestly, I was on the ground like, damn. Then Rook come help me up like, hey, we got 3 free throws. I'm like, all right, yeah. So I didn't know that he got fouled.
Britt, let's move over to talking about Ant a little bit, because that was the story of Ant's game last night, or what he kind of had to do against Denver. I mean, they built the wall at the top. I'm not saying Ant was a 10 out of 10 against the coverage in it, because the first half was very slow, but they were taking the ball out of his hands. In the second half, they found better ways. Ant I think he figured out the coverage a little bit more over the course of time and was being a distributor, getting to the middle of the floor. The last play is a great example of it. The kick to Nikhil there. What did you think about Denver's defensive game plan in this? Because it was, as much as it hurts them to lose Porter Jr. and Murray in a game, they are offense first players replaced with, Peyton Watson, who's a defensive player first, and Pickett as well.
Well, I agree with your overall assessment, the big picture. I thought from the second half through the end of overtime was maybe the best I've seen Ant play in terms of this eternal debate over balancing who he can be as an alpha scorer and what he needs to do to make sure this team flows as an offense overall. I thought that the ball got a little sticky for both of he and Randall in the first half, especially when they were down big and they were kind of feeling like the game is slipping away and it's up to me to do something about it or something. And I still think they trust each other a little bit too much in terms of it being, not my turn, your turn, but more, I'll look for you right now because you're the second best player in terms of scoring on the team.
Sure, I get what you're saying.
They both would say that,
Yeah.
And so Ant, I think was I got it down. He was 5, 4, and 2 in the first half. 5 points, 4 rebounds.
Minott had more than him.
And 2 assists. Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Why not?
And so in the second half, he was 18, 5, and 6 in the third and fourth quarters. And in overtime, he was 11, 1, and 0. So 29 points in the second half in overtime versus 5 points in the first half. And it showed. You could see it. And what I love about it is he got 29 points, and yet very, very rarely did you see that between the legs dribble, stare down out on the perimeter. It was constantly getting off the ball early. And that is so important.
Right.
We've seen Ant get off the ball with like 12 on the clock. Ant was getting off the ball with 17 on the clock. And that 5 seconds is absolutely vital. How many times did the Wolves, in particular, getting that kick out with less than 5 on the clock?
The timing part is so important, and it's almost kind of like, and I think what the next step of the progression is for Ant is when they're bringing that 2 on the ball, as you did the last 20 minutes of that game, you almost want to go put yourself into the double team there quicker so there's more time to play off of it. Sometimes that's what Ant's been like. He's like, okay, here comes the double, and he kind of takes 2 retreat dribbles, and then they kind of slowly creep up there, and then now it's 6 on the clock. It's that's the shot at the end of regulation for Randall, or the shot at the end of overtime for kick to Randall to McDaniels.
He did hold it too long in those crucial possessions. You're absolutely right about that. But throughout the third and fourth quarters, what I really saw from him was a willingness to get off the ball and finally a realization that does not end the possession for you. Yeah. If you get off the ball, guess what? You're still probably the guy everybody on the court is looking for. And if you're not, the defense is really glued to you. And there's a lot of time on the clock to take advantage of that. And the Wolves' offense was so much better, notwithstanding the beginning of the fourth quarter, which we should talk about in a minute, just in terms of those 2 brain farts that happened. But what Ant was able to do in the second half, and then when he knew he had his rhythm and nailed those 2 back-to-back threes, that was probably the biggest leverage point in the game. That was the time when you just said, okay, and Denver understood, okay, that 2 we're bringing, we are really bringing it. And we, everybody better remember, this guy is not going to beat us with these open, threes coming down. We need to get on him. And that has a tremendous impact on the other 4 players on the court. And it was pretty obvious that that's what happened. And, as I said, he had 6 assists in the third and fourth quarters. And that was precisely the time when the Wolves needed to leverage a movement off the ball system because Denver was feeling its oats, especially in the beginning of the game, saying, all right, we're not going to get punked. We're going to play some defense tonight, and we're going to ambush these people, and we're going to take Ant out of the game. And they did for most of the first half. But the trust, and then the last thing I want to say, it reminds me when you showed that clip of Ant in the locker room. I'm here in Minneapolis, obviously, so I'm seeing the game on TNT. Stephanie Reddy brings Ant over, and, they're going to talk to Ant because, they win the game and everything. And Ant's going, no. And he said, Nikhil.
Yeah, he did.
and he shepherds, he yells for Nikhil to come over. And TNT's kind of scrambling as to whether or not to go away or when Nikhil's going to show up in the picture or whatever. But they finally get there just in time. It's like maybe a 15-second delay. And Nikhil's in there, and all of a sudden, Ant's doing his thing like he does with Jade McDaniels all the time. And this guy is, he's the guy that did everything. And for somebody like Nikhil, people may think this stuff is corny. Nikhil Alexander doesn't believe in corny. He believes corniness only exists for people who aren't vulnerable enough to embrace it, And he embraces that stuff. And he said, Finch had confidence in me. Ann had confidence in me. Got me the ball in the corner. Finch had confidence in me to play me all this time. It is the confidence that is ingrained in him and the consistency that he has put forth. This is a success story about teamwork and about guys like Ant and Finch and the rest of the teammates. Nas, obviously beloved on that roster, giving him the faith, and then him, whether it's his religion or whether it's his work habits, he has grown this season, especially from just an absolutely dreadful preseason where he thought he was going to be the point guard and waiting, and it didn't work out. The growth he has made in that, and the role that somebody like Ann has in that process, and the role Ann has on the team. I mean, I'm one of the guys, like a lot of the beat writers, who notice the warts about Ant and kind of feel obligated to call them out, because if we don't, who will? I mean, it's a hero culture, and Ant's got hero shoes, And so what doesn't get talked about enough is one of the reasons that's such a good locker room is because the star of the team does have his teammates' best interest at heart. He really does.
We asked Nikhil about that after the game.
For me, it's just to calm down. I think because they were reviewing it.
There's the free throws here first. He's talking
sure.
about, but then he talks about Ant trusting him.
And that whole entire time, we just had a bunch of time, so it can go two ways. You can sit there just thinking about the free throws. What if I miss? What if I don't? What if I miss? What if I don't? And then at some point in time, I was just like, oh shit, man, if I miss, I miss. So it is what it is, and I trust in myself. I trust my work, and I knew at the end of the day, with the nerves and all that stuff, just to enjoy that moment. For me, making those two free throws, having the patience, not really worrying about the crowd, just zoning out, knowing that I've done this literally over 1,000 times. So that's all it is.
You said trust yourself, but it's clear that the guys trust you too. I mean, they're getting you the ball in big spots and take big shots. How does it feel like that they have that faith in you to make those come through in those moments?
I mean, it's a testimony to Ant, and growth. Him being a star in his role, and to make that pass, to realize, to have the court vision, awareness, even with the time on the clock, to still get it in time to get a good look off. I mean, hats off to him. It's tough when you are the guy and you want to take the last shot and the team's double teaming you, you're trying to find a shot, but you have to pass it up. He trusted in us, and first 2 times I want to say we didn't get it, but this time just keep trusting it, keep doing the right thing, and that's a testament to over time the game getting back.
Did you know you were fouled right away?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. I knew it was going to be called, and as soon as I was just looking to see if I got the 4-point play. For me, that's kind of what I was.
It was cool, Britt. it just kept kind of popping up in the locker room, even with the guys that we were interviewing or not interviewing, just like this sentiment of like, nobody on this team works harder than Nikhil. Like Ant said in his thing, he's like, Nikhil's in the gym when we're all asleep. Like he's there, but I think he said he's worked out 3 times before anybody else has done 3 different workouts before anybody else has gotten there. And there's just a massive, there's trust, which you're talking about, but trust is established with respect. And Nikhil has developed that with this group. And that's why, yeah, I mean, I don't think Ant thought twice about kicking to Nikhil in the corner in the same way that when he's done that in the past and found Mike Conley, who we know he implicitly trusts.
Right.
It's sort of the same thing. Let me grab our break here, and then we'll keep moving. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino, and we are excited to let you know that Kyle and I, it feels like kind of perfect timing, we are doing a live show at Treasure Island on Saturday at 5 p.m. The Wolves play the Sixers at 6 p.m. So we're kind of hosting from 5 to 6 with the show, and the Timberwolves are taking over for a watch party there at Treasure Island in the Parlay Lounge, where we've done this before. It's a little bit earlier of a game, so yeah, I think it's certainly possible if you 6 to 8:30 be able to drive down back home at a reasonable hour. You could stay the night there as well. But we're looking forward to this being kind of a fun celebration of the end of the regular season and just what's been a wild season. So 5 p.m. Saturday at Treasure Island Resort and Casino. Kyle and I will do the live show, and then 6 p.m. Watch party. Come at 5 for the show. If you can't get there that early on Saturday, the game will be going there as well. And like I said, the Wolves will be hosting Crunch and the dancers, and Pooh Richardson's going to be there. It's going to be a fun one. Treasure Island again this Saturday, April 5th, 5 p.m. live show. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. I was looking at this morning. I'm like, oh my God, the Nuggets play again tonight. And I was looking at what Jokic's numbers are. It's like 28.5 points. The points plus rebounds plus assists is 50.5. They're just like, yep, dare you to think that this dude is tired and go less than that. I don't know. I'm so amazed by Jokic. That's what I want to talk about next year. But it's always fun to look at. They are playing the Spurs, so maybe you can put together a Nuggets lineup there. Maybe if Murray plays, I saw he was on there, 23 points. If Murray plays in that game, he did warm up before last night's game. Maybe you go with Murray to have more than 23 points in that game. But as always, we'd love it if you try it out. Prize Picks, and there's me. I'm taking more than. I'm 50.5 points plus rebounds plus assists from Nikola Jokic against the Spurs. That's PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app. You can use the promo code Dane, and they will throw you $50 in your account when you make your first $5 lineup. Spurs are
terrible on defense.
Terrible. I'm not even going to say who the player was. They were actually. I guess I did know that there was a game before. They're like the Nuggets play tomorrow, and then John or somebody goes, yeah, they play the Spurs, and the player goes, oh, they'll be all right. So we'll see with that. But let's talk about Jokic a little bit.
Sure.
In the context of what he did. I mean, a 60-point triple-double is absolutely wild. We can talk a little bit about how the Wolves guarded them. Rudy obviously fouls out at the end of regulation, but what stood out to me after the game was I've never seen cover this team for 8 years, been in the locker room for hundreds of games. I've never seen a group compliment an opposing player the way that Wolves did of Nikola Jokic last night. I think Julius Randle's the Ant one's going kind of viral, but I liked Randle's comments on Jokic, who Randle had to guard Jokic after the game. Here's Julius on Nikola Jokic.
I told him, bro, he's incredible. Like, that dude is absolutely ridiculous. His touch around the rim, and he missed some bunnies too. But I guess when you score 61, you're gonna miss something. Like, damn, but bro, that shit's unbelievable, man. I can't lie, bro. Like, he's an incredible basketball player. Credit to him.
All I hear when I shot it, I hear kill.
So I'm just glad we got the win, man. But Yeah, hats off to him, bro. He's incredible.
You just sometimes just kind of have to pray that he misses. It's like, I mean, just like.
I mean, yeah, you just got to try to make it tough for him. But like I said, like he's shooting turnarounds off the wrong foot, you know, fading to his right. He's doing all type of crazy shit out there, bro. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. You know what I mean? Obviously, you know when he want to get to his left shoulder, but still, like, he's making tough shots. And I feel like anytime he get it in the paint, he puts it on the rim, like it's so soft. Like, the shot is extremely soft. And, you know, it's gonna find its way through the hoop. So like, he was great.
What'd you think, Britt? Jokic last night.
I thought he was really, really good. I also think that if the 11 assists had been 15 or 16, it would have been a different game. And he did not have, he hit open people, especially in that third, fourth quarter crucible where, you know, they race off to these big leads twice. And then you could just see as the Wolves began to eat into it, a lack of faith. A deep down, I mean, we've seen enough of this team to, you know, evince that kind of insecurity in games this season. And you can almost smell it on a team when they're not having it. And Murray and Porter Jr. are both guys who have taken a lot of big shots. Christian Brown, I actually thought, did the best he could. But Westbrook, let's face it, is always a crapshoot. It really is. You know, you're basically hitting on 16 with Russell Westbrook all the time. You know, it may turn out to be very good, but it oftentimes is not. And so there's that, and the fact that he had 61 points and 11 assists, I think, is a good sign. There was a time in the first half, I think he had like 23 points and 1 assist in the first half. And that's when you say, all right, that kind of imbalance is what you want to do with Nikola Jokic. It literally is, in my opinion, the reason why the Timberwolves do well against Denver is because Jokic, while phenomenal, is less of a superstar against them than he is against most teams. And I know that sounds weird when a guy gets 61, 12, and 11, but that was also done in 52 minutes. So, you know, let's keep that in mind. That's 14 minutes more probably than his average, or at least a quarter's worth more than his average. And so, you know, you have to factor that in. I think all things considered, as crazy as it sounds, that they did not do a terrible job on Jokic. And his teammates.
That sounds crazy, but I kind of agree.
And his teammates let him down, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, Christian Brown, as I said, I think was hitting big shots, and I think he's a comer. I think he's somebody that is going to be getting better and better. But that bench, Peyton Watson obviously is not an offensive player. Pickett is obviously not somebody you can rely on for big shots. So ever since they won that championship and had to, you know, punt Caldwell Pope and Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, that is eaten away. And again, it makes Jokic's numbers pop a little stronger because he has no choice. He will fill the gaps of whatever is needed. But the gap should be that the ball movement to his teammates is successful rather than taking it against the double and triple team and scoring over them is what's successful. That is a wearying thing. And Jokic had 5 fouls last night and was less of a factor. He should have fouled out on an and one in the second overtime. They didn't make that call. But the Wolves made him work at both ends, and Denver made him work at the offensive end in a manner that is just, you know, for a guy of his, you know, height and weight, it was an amazing performance. And yet it could have been even better, and it could have been done in a win if he'd had a little bit more help.
He's literally the reason they're in the game and that the game goes to overtime. Obviously, I mean, but in a very literal sense, I mean,
yeah,
he, as Ant does, right, plays the whole first quarter, plays the whole third quarter, and then they get their little 5 minutes of rest at the beginning of the second quarter, at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Wolves are up 84-79 after 3 quarters, and it's like, here come the non-Jokic minutes, right? Like, it's gonna be 4 or 5 minutes. Wolves, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, they got to stack like 5 or 6 here, make this double digits,
right?
By the time that that Jokic gets back in. Well, Jokic didn't sit, and they went on a 16-2 run while the Wolves, Gobert, McDaniels, Clark, Alexander Walker, Conley lineup out there, a lineup I think designed to play against the non-Jokic Nuggets right there. But it's a 16-2 run to start the fourth quarter there because somehow Nikola Jokic is a player who can continue to play at a high level, an extremely high level, regardless of what his minute load is. He played the final 34 minutes of the game straight. And he's playing up in coverage the whole time too, man. Like that is a whole different defensive animal when you're got it being up blitzing coverage against Anthony Edwards rather than, a lot of centers are just sitting back and drop. Right. He's doing that defensively while also the entire offense running through him, facing double teams, scoring 61 points, looking for his teammates when they're out doubles, whether or not they hit him, but that he was able to keep his fitness level there, kept him in this game. And quite frankly, once Finch called that timeout after the 16-2 run that the Nuggets started that quarter with, I'm like, all right, he won it. Jokic, one of the many times where you got the result of the game wrong at the moment. But that part, I thought the ability to stay out there and continue doing it was extremely impressive from Jokic.
Well, I will tell you that the Oklahoma City Thunder are probably my favorite team to watch in the NBA this year, and I have an enormous amount of respect for SGA. I think he is having a season for the ages. He's the second best player in the NBA this year, and he is also the second most valuable player in the NBA this year. Jokic is like top 4 in almost every category. I mean, he's top 4 in scoring, top 4 in assists. I think he's top 10 in steals or something, and top 4 in rebounds. It's just an amazing statistical season. Mm-hmm. And then when you couple it with the fact that Denver's record and who they are, it's just if he isn't having his best season, he's having one of his best seasons, and he's a 3-time MVP guy who should have 4 by now. That award for Embiid, I thought, was, a voter fatigue, and SGA, I think, will probably win it this year, and that will be voter fatigue. But I think that it is the superlatives. You run out of superlatives. His 3-point shooting this season is just, the Wolves made the decision not to challenge his threes. I mean, from the opening play. And I understand it, even though what is he, like 47% from 3 or something this year? It's like, all right, buddy.
It's just making him do the things that aren't his preference. He's good at everything. He's good at shooting threes. He's good at trying to have a game plan that asks him to score 45 plus. But I don't think shooting threes or being a 50-point scorer are Jokic's preferences stylistically of how to play. And I do think it's worth noting that Mike Nori and Chris Finch, Denver's staff before, and respect Jokic absolutely up and down. I mean, you talk to those two guys about Nikola Jokic, they will laud that dude. But I think they know Nikola, and they know that those aren't his preferences. And I think at the end of the day, that's what the Wolves' game plan is against Jokic. We can't stop you. We're just going to try and make you do the things that you maybe prefer to do.
Make it less fun. And for Nikola Jokic, certainly among like elite top 5 superstars, I think fun is as important to him. He clearly cares about the game more than any other attendant bullshit. Yeah. I mean, he always has. He's the kind of guy who goes home as soon as he can and, basically endures rather than basks in, all this acclaim. He likes to play basketball. He likes to play basketball. And that's, just leave me alone to play basketball. But having him play basketball the way he loves to play is what teams should be trying to prevent. And last night, I think there was some of that. But again, I do think that if he had been able to get some assists and know that, he could trust those people, that he was dishing to, I mean, everything from like these skip passes and, oh, yeah, that guy's wide open in the corner, to that like behind the back bounce pass to Aaron Gordon in the paint. I mean, these things are just, that's what he loves. He doesn't love to just stand there and wind up and take that three. I mean, he's a basketball purist in some ways, and he likes to be, one of five.
I know Nikola Jokic isn't the greatest player of all time. But I was thinking about this morning. For me, I'm 35. I've covered the NBA for like 8 years, and watching it, religiously for this period of time. And obviously Jokic has been a huge part of this era of those 8 years. It's hard for me personally to comprehend that there have been better basketball players. I know that, I mean, Jordan, I'm a kid. LeBron, like, I'm also still like just not as in tune with the league. And I know that maybe, I guess that's probably the best player I've ever seen in person is like prime LeBron, but it is just, it's hard for me to like wrap my head around the idea that like Kobe Bryant was better than him, even, and I think more people like yourself were watching Kobe more closely, and were more mature when they were, doing so. I respect all of those people's opinion. I'm just saying, for me, if there have been better basketball players, that's crazy.
Right.
Like, MJ must have been fucking awesome. I know he was, but just the impact. What I'm trying to say is I just watch the NBA all the time, and it's not even close to my eye test, not even stats alone, that there is a player in this league even close that impacts winning as much as Nikola Jokic does. To be able to make this team, no offense to just this Denver team is flawed, and he alone makes them an absolute problem for every single team in the NBA. I love watching Nikola Jokic play basketball.
The analogy that comes to mind for me is like boxers. How do you compare phenomenal boxers? A lot of it has to do with what are they capable of doing in the ring. Are they just a knockout puncher? Are they great footwork, speed, hands, whatever? Another thing is, what is the caliber of the competition when they get in the ring? And then the third thing is, how long do they do it? Now, there are people who are huge Mike Tyson fans because for a while, Mike Tyson was one of the most amazing boxers you've ever seen. And other people might be Rocky Marciano guys because he's the only undefeated heavyweight champ, 49-0. There you go. The point being, I've seen so much basketball, and aesthetics do play a part in how you feel about somebody. I mean, I love Hakeem Olajuwon. I put him higher in my overall rank of people. I understand he's not one of the 3 best players that ever played the game, but it's really hard for me to say he's not, because I saw him, Right. I saw what he is able to do. And so same thing, even like back to Oscar Robertson, I mean, you really want to date myself. So
that is like actually what I'm asking is like, because think about it for me. It's like, what is Oscar Robertson to me, right? I never watched him. I can't properly.
He was the original guy who was a triple-double guy on the court, whether he got a triple-double or not. He was the kind of guy who was a great rebounder, who was a great scorer, who was a great playmaker, and played great defense. He was like one of those guys
package.
Did everything, had the right size. He was like the ultimate, large wing who was also the point guard and could jump center if he had to. I mean, just one of those guys. but he played on the Cincinnati Royals, and the Boston Celtics won like 15 rings in 18 years, And so a lot of it we get back to, do they win too? And that's where Jordan has his claim to fame.
For sure.
And that's where LeBron has gotten his claim to fame with 3 different franchises. So I do think that it all depends on your criteria, and that's why these great debates happen. But I agree with you that in terms of somebody who treats the game like a chess match, I don't think there's ever been anybody better than Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, that's a good way.
If we're talking about somebody who can break down another team through instinct and knowledge and the capability to put that knowledge, his touch, his finesse, what Randall was talking about around the rim, but that's also true of his passing or his ability to see the court and to see what can develop. A lot of times Jokic's passes further the guy into an assist. He fosters ball movement by where he's putting the ball. It's almost like where he's putting the ball makes the guy go to the place he should be going to, even more than the guy was going to go there to begin with. So it is. I mean, what we're seeing, and by the way, Steph Curry had 52 last night and had 5 steals, and is also one of these guys in this pantheon. If you want to talk about a guy who should be in the discussion, I know LeBron and MJ dominate it, but there are always a half a dozen players almost all the time, just as that, that you need to talk about as, man, I saw that guy play. And Nikola Jokic is obviously one of those players. And I predict that if he wants to, and I'm not sure he does, if he wants to play another 10 years, he will be in that upper echelon conversation. He'll be in that, well, you got to make room. MJ and LeBron are up here. You got to make room for Nikola Jokic. Now,
and even like the dunk, maybe like the Duncans and the KG, like that.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
But he's already there. He's already with the Duncans and the KGs, in my opinion. I think he's what he needs to do to get to the most elite grouping. And Bill Russell, some would put in there, whatever. Everybody's got their own criteria. Is longevity.
So specific to, the Wolves, as we sit here recording this, are tied for the 6th seed right now. Denver is the 3 seed, and I guess they're kind of jockeying with the Lakers a little bit there too. But we're looking at a distinct possibility that we get Wolves Nuggets in round 1, and I want to specifically talk about the Jokic element of that and how the Wolves. What your belief is for the Wolves' ability to guard Jokic and this Denver team, assuming that Porter Jr.'s back and Murray's back. Last night, I thought was a little bit instructive by necessity that we saw a lot of Randall on Jokic, which was a new thing. The Wolves would have Towns guard Jokic all the time and kind of have Rudy lurk, right? That was a big part of last year's playoff series. They have the plan this season has been Gobert on Jokic in pretty much single coverage and, stay home on the Porter Juniors and the Murrays and that sort of way. I do wonder if experientially this opens up another possibility for how another thing in the bag for the Wolves of how they can guard Jokic. Can they do the Randall with Gobert lurking element of it? How would that fare? And then just how will Rudy fare if they don't do that and they just guard him traditionally? I get the logic behind that. I do think that Jokic will have 45. If that's even Gobert is probably about as good as it gets guarding him in that way. It just seems, I don't think it's going to work if you just do the Gobert on Jokic thing exclusively and do that for 7 games. I just think Jokic can and will take advantage of that. I'm curious if the Wolves have developed additional ways to be able to slow him and Denver down as a whole.
Well, I think there's a couple of wild cards. One wild card is when Gobert stayed home witnessed the birth of his child.
Yeah.
Naz Reid had a
Game
phenomenally good game against Nikola Jokic. I have not seen that nearly as well after that. And I do think that that's probably an outlier. But if you
I think, sorry to cut you off real quick, though. I think that was the game that they learned if you could choke out the Murray part of it. Because remember, that was the picking up full court. McDaniels was picking up Murray full court. Alexander Walker, when he was in there, is picking up full court. And what Denver had to pivot to in that game is they started having Gordon bring it. Remember? And so I really do think in that game, too, the Wolves found some answers to how they approach it. Sorry, continue.
And no, that's okay, because we have to talk globally about this. That'll get into my second wild card in a minute. But right now, I do think if you can figure out a way, Naz is very, very officials conscious. It's really a flaw in his game that if he gets a couple of 50-50 whistles against him, it bothers him, and that needs to change. It really hurts his effectiveness. Also, I've said this for a while now, the jury is very, very out right now on how Naz Reid handles big-time situations as now an increasingly important member of this rotation. If Naz can come forward and deliver the kind of performance he did in that game too, and obviously you're right, he got a lot of help from the Nuggets having to scramble and being a little bit ambushed in that game. I think that will be a huge factor because Naz he can be bullied, but he also has the quickness to use. He has certain skills that can be used. And if the coaching staff and Naz himself, he gets the confidence and they come up with a game plan that enables him to join the group of McDaniels, Randall, and Gobert. I don't think, to answer your question directly, a steady diet Rudy Gobert on Nikola Jokic. We've seen that movie, and we saw it again in the playoffs. The middle three games that Denver won, they were seeking switches of Gobert onto Jokic. I mean, they wanted that, and Jokic was torturing him. It's where a lot of the memes of who's this defensive player of the year came from. So I do think you've got to try Naz. You've got to try McDaniels. You've got to use that kind of scramble. They did send people from different angles at him. Dillingham had a pretty interesting steal on him from the weak side. Jalen Clark was less successful. Minott can be a springy wing that way. DiVincenzo is kind of the gritty guy that if I were going to send somebody at Jokic, it may be somebody like him who has pretty good instincts and has a sense of the whistle, knows what kind of physicality they'll let go and what doesn't.
I think that's a great point. I didn't like the quality of the Wolves' doubles onto Jokic. Ant just kind of would come up and just be.
Yeah, Ant is the wrong guy for it.
Yeah.
I think
Dante's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one wild card. The other one is it may not matter because if Denver can run on the Wolves, as they showed, it was a mirror image. The beginning of the game and the beginning of the fourth quarter, 16-2 runs and 21-5 runs is what they. If you wanted to go for the most dominant phase, the 16-2. If you want to go with the most point differential, it was the 21-5. But either way you look at it, let's use the 21-5 for a minute. In less than one quarter's time, Denver outscored the Wolves 41-10. 42-10, excuse me. 32-point differential. And the Wolves had to make that up in three quarters.
No.
I mean, that's just and Denver, to my surprise, quite frankly, but they are leading the NBA in fast break points, which surprised me.
Malone before the game, I went over to his pregame media thing. I mean, he just he literally said, he goes, "We have to run all the time. If we choose to play this game in the half court, it's going to be a long night for us." I mean, that is a stated part of the plan here, and the Wolves are not a good transition.
They are not, and it's because of Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. I mean, I hate to call it out, but they're older veterans who are doing their work on the offensive end, and they get caught. They are not fast enough to reverse course and get down there. Right. And there were a couple of times where Julius Randle, when he does that kamikaze go for broke on that banker rebound that sends him, 5 feet into the end line, past the end line, that's 2 points. And hopefully only 2 points for the Wolves, against them. So Denver has something that could be kryptonite in this playoff series because it's been a really significant flaw in the Wolves' defense, and it is now a feature of Denver's offense. And you cannot expect a team to come back from 30 points down from 2 stretches of games. You cannot have 21-5 runs open up the first and fourth quarters and have any reasonable expectation that they're going to win.
I thought a flaw inversely on Denver's side in this matchup historically, right, is why just a top line reason why the Wolves match up well with Denver is they don't really have a guy to be able to guard Ant and slow him in an individual matchup.
Yeah, Brown is by far the best, I think.
It is the best, but that's not,
right, I agree.
That's not a big impediment. Yes, yeah, it's not Dort. Plus, they don't have the rim protection. So Ant is, as we saw in the playoffs last year, it's kind of like he can get what he wants to get if he's able to navigate the initial coverage there because there's not backline help at the rim. And I thought a new thing that papered over some of Denver's flaws in this matchup was Peyton Watson as a rim protector at the rim on the backside, right? Because we know how this works. The Wolves bring Rudy up to set the screen for Ant. Jokic comes up to touch at the level. They build that wall there. And then typically, right, if Peyton Watson isn't at the game, the low man who has to rotate over behind Jokic is like Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. or something like that. And that's not resistance. If Ant can break it, or if you can find Rudy or Randall on the short roll, there's just not resistance at the rim. Watson was a rim protector. I think he had 4 or 5 blocks. Also just deterring there. Right. The deterrence part of it, and that even more so, I thought, than the blocks, it took away, I thought, a main staple of what gives the Wolves a major offensive advantage in this game. I don't know exactly how Watson would fit into things when the Nuggets are back at full strength, but if I'm Malone, I want that out there because specific to the Wolves matchup, because I need rim protection. I need rim protection, that rotation over there. Or even if it isn't pick and roll coverage, that is Jokic's biggest flaws. He's not going to be able to get up there and significantly deter shots at the rim when he's back at the rim himself. So I thought that was a big thing there.
Yeah, and if you're talking about things that the Wolves have in their pocket now, like Denver has pace.
Yeah,
the Wolves have suddenly become a team that values the basketball and possessions. I did this thing this morning because the Wolves had more offensive rebounds than turnovers last night.
Yeah.
Rudy.
Rudy was being guarded by Watson, so yeah.
I think that this is an area in which they become a lot more fearsome as a postseason team because I went through game by game. They played 74 by now or 76 by now. Mm-hmm. In the first 24 games of the season, the Wolves had more offensive rebounds than turnovers once. And it was in a 2-point loss to Boston. Okay.
Huh.
In the last 20 games, it has happened 7 times, and they're 6-1. For the season, they are 14-7. They've done it 21 times now in 74 games. Or if you take away the first 24 games, they have done it 20 times in, let me see, 24 minus 76, 24 minus 68, though, because they haven't played
True. 44.
70, yeah, whatever it is. It's like almost 40% of the games they played in the last 3 months. They've had more offensive rebounds than turnovers. And if you're looking at offensive efficiency is points per possession. You turn the ball over, your possession is over.
It's a 0.
You get an offensive rebound, your possession continues. That is how it happens. And Finch talked about this while they were going through it in December in particular. It was just an awful stretch for this. And he said, we are giving up shots. We are getting outshot. And last night, the Wolves, the TNT announcers were latching onto the stat. At one point, the Wolves had 26 more shots than the Nuggets did. I don't know what it turned out to be. I think they had something like 111 shots for the game, though. And that cures a lot of ills. If you can get those, Rudy had 6 offensive rebounds in the first half alone. And last night, again, was one of those things. And by the way, it also happened in one of their other games. So 2 of the 4 games they played with Denver, they've had more offensive rebounds than turnovers. And what that means is that Denver doesn't have a disruptor, the kind of guy you're talking about, who gets a lot of steals, who just disrupts. Brown is probably the best at it. Aaron Gordon, I think, is a really good defender, and I have not rewatched the game, obviously, but I will go back when I rewatch the game. I want to see why Aaron Gordon was not as much of a factor on the boards as I think he should be. I don't know how often he was out there on the wall against Ant, but that may be a factor in there. I don't think he was most of the time.
Yeah, what I had written down was they had Gordon on McDaniels to start the game, which kind of surprised me. I mean, that's just a whole part related to this is Denver matched up different than they normally do. They put Jokic on Randall. They put Gordon on McDaniels. They put Watson on Gobert. They put Brown on Edwards. They put Pickett on Conley. We don't normally see, Jokic not on Gobert. One that stood out. And then you're like, well, Watson on Gobert, and you're like, that's different too. But then I was sitting there looking, and I'm like, why is Aaron Gordon on Jaden McDaniels? And then they switched it in the second half, and they put Gordon onto Randall, and then Jokic came out and was guarding McDaniels there at the beginning. But yeah, he's a huge X factor too. Let me grab one more break here, and then we'll wrap this up. Today's show is brought to you by Skims. You know about Skims from here, maybe on this podcast, that they are now in the men's space, but you've heard about Skims in the women's space. They've been the official underwear partner of the WNBA, and they're now the official underwear partner of the NBA and USA basketball. And they've sent me them. It's the boxer briefs I wear when I work out. It reminds me of kind of like the compression shorts you would wear playing basketball back in the day. I really love them, not just for working out, but it's kind of like workout clothes. They end up being some of your most comfortable clothing, even if you're just hanging out on the couch or whatever it might be. I have the 5-inch stretch boxer briefs. Those are my personal favorite, but they have a lot of different options there as well. I think you should try and find a pair that works for you, especially if you're if you are playing basketball in your life or even just running. It really, that's what it fits me. You can shop Skims men's at skims.com or in Skims stores. If you do shop online, let them know that we sent you. Select podcast in the survey at the end and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA basketball. I mean, we're 60 minutes in here, so I think it's okay to talk about Josh Minott and Rob Dillingham and stuff like that. I thought that was important. I thought that was important in this game in that first half. I mean, they started terrible. They started this game terribly, and they really needed. We talked about Nikhil, the kind of second half of the first quarter when he was out there. That's kind of Minott checks in 3 minutes after him. That saved that game. It totally, we've seen in these Nuggets Wolves matchups before where the Wolves just kind of take 6 body blows from the Nuggets and they're down by 20 or something early. And I thought the bench was what kind of stabilized this team and didn't let it drop to that degree, which was obviously extra important in a game where they don't have Naz Reid and they don't have Dante DiVincenzo, and Jalen Clark picks up 3 fouls in his first 4 minutes on the floor. Josh Minott had to play well for to be able to stay in that. Nikhil had to do what he did. And even that 5-minute spurt from Rob Dillingham was one of the very first things Finch brought up in his post-game press conference, was Dillingham specifically there. I found that part to be really meaningful.
Well, the thing about Minott was that he clearly was ready for the moment. I don't know if he had any inkling that he was going to come in. He probably thought, looking at their lineups, and especially after Clark.
Can I play you a clip?
Yeah,
Finch kind of talked about this, and he was a little illuminating that about Josh's frustration that he had this season, but kind of locking back in. I thought this was interesting.
Yeah, all credit to him. He's had a couple a couple good weeks. Whether it be in Sissel or in practice or just shooting the ball, and it's hard. I mean, he lost his opportunity earlier in the season, but staying ready. I know at times he was down, and you could see his mind wander away. But he redialed himself back in, and was ready for tonight. And we had talked about it a little bit, that how well he had played in practice and in Sissel games. So for him to come in and shoot the ball with confidence like he was doing in the preseason, was huge for us, of course. But it's all credit to Josh, because he put himself in the position to be ready.
Sorry, continue.
The truce is over. I mean, the truce is here.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you really begin to think. I literally thought at the trade deadline, that guy is a goner.
Yeah.
I mean,
but he makes less than the minimum. I think that was a big factor right there. That can
credit Minott and Finch for being adults about it both ways. And I think that he did shoot with confidence right away, and he hit his first 2 threes, which made a huge difference. I mean, those were times when the points were getting so hard to come by. And also, sometimes, especially when Conley and Gobert on the floor, their activity is incredibly predictable, which isn't a bad thing, because they're so disciplined as defenders and they make the right play. But if they are a touch slower and they are predictable, your offense, if it's already getting points in transition and you're already up big and you're settling in, you have a mindset that here's the way we're going to play tonight. And then you get a guy who's like a chicken with his head cut off guy, like Minott, who's springy, and he's always been able, even when he was getting garbage minutes or just trying to make a name for himself on this team in some way, shape, or form, has been a guy who has a knack for disruption in somewhat creating chaos. And what we saw was he wasn't getting a lot of steals, and it wasn't a high-profile thing, but he was mucking up Denver's transition.
Yeah.
And I think that just that very fact of kind of slowing down the freight train that was happening out there, and he's got the size and he's got the springiness to do that. And then when you bring, Na was already, really doing that. So you had Na and Minott, and they're beginning to have that kind of personality put into the defense. And then you're thinking, okay, this guy is like Peyton Watson. He's a springy guy who's in for defense.
Sure, yeah.
And you leave him open for a couple of threes, and bang, bang, 6 points. And
I thought the threes were so important because they were corner threes, right?
And they were so wide open.
Well, and I mean, they know this, but that's what gets opened up when you play that coverage. You have that high wall coverage. You bring the big up. It's the short roll. The guy rotates over from the corner. The corner's open. Yep. And Minott started doing that. It was like a reminder of like, oh yeah, this is what we do against that, because the Wolves were lost. I mean, that's like 10 minutes into the game, their heads are spinning or whatever, trying to figure out the coverage that they know. But the Wolves took 15 corner threes in that game, which is a high volume of corner threes.
Right.
And they made 8 of the 15 of them. I thought Minott, like, I mean, you know, put stuff on film in the middle of the game, but it's kind of like that. It was kind of like that. Like,
but you know what? They
you
may have put it on the film in halftime. That's what they do. They look at plays. You know, when I did that assistant coach's story, those guys are in charge of showing like 4 plays and a half. Right. You know, in the locker room. And you're absolutely right. If one of them is like, hey, this guy who's like the 11th player on our team is getting wide open threes in the quarter, why aren't you guys doing that?
Because he just had to sit there. But I like, he also had a tip dunk, which I believe was a dive from the corner.
He was wide open in the second half in his second rotation too, where I think it was Ant or somebody found him. It's like he wasn't on the scouting report. You know, and it's like, all right, this guy's in the game, you know, but Anna's coming down, you know, the Rudy's setting a screen and rolling, and everybody's worried about things. And Minott is a mover. That's one thing he is. You know, Minott only stands there when he hopes to get a catch and shoot 3. Right. But if he's on, if he realizes that isn't happening, he tries to get involved. And so, yeah, I absolutely think you're right about the timing of when he came in, and why it was important was because the Wolves were not expending the energy of their big horses to get back in this game at that particular time. They were turning a heavy double-digit lead into something slightly under double digits, and then letting the starters come back and do some work. And I just think that Dillingham a little bit less so, because Dillingham, you can't teach the physicality of the NBA to a teenager who weighs $165. It just is what it is. And that is true on offense. I think what he's done on defense has been before Finch sat him, he had 2 really good plays on defense. Yep. One was the steal for the bucket, and I think he sat right after that, which was kind of weird. I thought maybe Finch was just
there's 40 seconds left. It was defense.
I know, but he's trying to keep his confidence up for a second rotation in the second half, which never came. But I do think, and that other play where he was a help defender, where he slowed down, I think it was a double team near the paint or something. Yeah. Whatever it was some kind of action. I just remember 2 back-to-back plays on defense that were very important. And that's what you want. You want your role players to be ready, and you want them to, you know, just not make it worse, and ideally make it better. And Dillingham, I think, was a +4 or whatever. He made it better.
When he checked into the game, it was kind of like when Nikhil checked into the game in the first quarter, and it was a pivot in the flow of how the game was going, the direction of it. When Rob checked in, Wolves had 42, Nuggets had 45. He's out there for 4 minutes, and they come out of those 4 minutes with the score then Wolves 52, Nuggets 51. Right. And you know, that seems small in the course. I think specific to this Wolves team, when the arrow is trending down, they need something to happen that like shakes them to get it moving the other direction. Sometimes maybe that's a hot Ant quarter, or you know, whatever it might be, right. But they do have a propensity to, when it starts slipping, to completely fumble it. And it was just striking to me that the bench, specifically Minott and Dillingham, when was the last time they played real rotation minutes? A month?
Absolutely, right.
That they were both, the changes in the graph of the game shifted when those players came into the game. I think that's just another testament to the depth of this team, that, you know, I think 1 through 8 is the best depth in the NBA, but it's another reminder that there's things behind there too. There's Terrence Shannon Jr. was hurt, wasn't able to play last night. I think he would have maybe been out there, but Minott's an option. Dillingham has redeemable, you know, skill sets situationally, that as you showed right there. And then, yeah, you mentioned there's a couple defensive plays. Like, I think this might be the last time we see Rob Dillingham, you know, this season. Right. And we reflect on the year, and you're going to go, well, you know, 8th overall pick, he didn't do that much this season. But I'm going to keep, you know, in my mind that What happened in Rob Dillingham's rookie season was that the intention to play defense was developed. And I think that started back in Summer League. Like that
was a huge Finch thing in Summer League, right?
Yeah, right.
And he was saying, and also, I mean, the first question I asked Tim Conley when he was on his orgasmic rant about, getting, Dillingham, and he's going to be, or throw him in the water, and he's got, it made it sound like he's going to be a seventh man, and and I said, on defense, how are you going to? We're not going to protect him. Well, all right, and I got it, and I understand now that the point isn't so much that you're not going to protect him, but you are going to force feed him things and see if he's a battler. And I think what we're seeing, because let's face it, they're targeting Conley now, and they'll just they'll keep it going. I mean, why would you change? And so the point being, though, Tyus Jones, when he came into the league, was, back down constantly.
Yeah.
Anybody who is $175 or less in the NBA is going to be tested in ISO against bigger players, and it's not going to go well. I mean, I can't think of a player who has been small and made that work immediately. Right. And so, but I do think, to your point, and it's a very important point, you have to have the ability not to be discouraged and to understand that if I do this, I will be somebody who is much more valuable than I am. I already know I can hoop if I have some space to hoop. I mean, his first step off the dribble is NBA. But he does need to make sure he's not a target. And the way to do that is to just get in the trenches and get your nose bloodied until you're bigger and stronger and smarter about how to do it. And those minutes, to that extent, they have not been a long time, but they have been learning minutes where he is understanding what the NBA is all about, and it will augur well for the future. In a perfect world, it would have been great to see him get 100 or 200 more minutes this season. I understand why he didn't. I also understand why he should have. And so it's a judgment call, and they're at a stage now where he is an emergency option. He's not a regular option, and Dillingham fans are probably disappointed by that. I get it. But I think DiVincenzo has proven that he deserves, 20, 24 minutes a game. I think Mike Conley has demonstrated that if he's protected enough on defense, that he is exactly the kind of poise option you need. And by the way, a guaranteed 40% from three and a great pick and roll partner for Rudy. There are reasons why Dillingham is where he is on the pecking order, but I agree. It's not all bad news this year.
I want to throw Conley into this Minott and Dillingham group from last night, as well as kind of like the others that stepped. Obviously, Conley starts, and those other guys aren't normally in the rotation. Right. But just specifically that last play of the game, contesting the Westbrook layup afterwards, or at the end of the game, that then led to the Nikhil corner shot. I asked Nikhil about that play after the game. Running down Westbrook on that play, that you were kind of there with him a little bit.
That's bigger, if not just the same as the free throws. Mike doesn't do that, we don't win that game. Simple. And it is the fact. We don't win that game.
It's a fact.
Well, I got news for him. If Westbrook had hit that shot, an exact same offensive possession happened, now would have been in a position to make all three free throws and tie the game. So it isn't necessarily
it would have been a make, though. Then you got to take it out. I mean,
I get it, but it's not. Facts are that if Westbrook fouls with down three, then he has a chance to tie the game, and I think he would have. So, but I get it. I mean,
Mike ran it down. Mike ran it down. That was
and that is the greater point. I'm just saying, Noah will always go out of his way to. He first of all, he loves Mike Conley. I'll never forget him, like in the locker room when we were on the road in the playoffs, just talking about how someday he wants to take over for Mike as a point guard here and everything. Yeah. He reveres him, and Mike Conley is is a demigod because of his veteran status and his preternatural poise on the court. So,
they all love him, man. I mean, even like you just saw that after Ant made big plays. Who's the guy that he's going through, nuzzled his head in there to Mike's shoulder? I mean, yeah, it's
and I totally agree. Mike Conley, I think the Wolves were minus 23 with him on the court last night.
I was gonna say it was the first half was particularly rough for Mike. It looked like 2024 Mike rather than 2025. But that play, I am with Nikhil.
And in his defense, 5 assists in the 2 overtimes, no turnovers.
Yep.
So that's what you want. And his only shot he took was a made 3.
We got anything else from this one?
No, I mean, we could talk about it all day, but I mean, and the glow is there. I think what I would like to say though is that the Wolves have Milwaukee on the road and they have Memphis on the road. Milwaukee doesn't have Dame, and they beat Phoenix last night, and they look pretty good. I saw a lot of that game because it right in front of the Wolves game. Sure. And Memphis obviously has great talent, but I'm in the camp that thinks that the firing of Taylor Jenkins is a karmic stink bomb that will be very, very hard for that team to recover from. They haven't won in the 2 games since they fired him. It was ridiculous. It was stupid. And I think the point being, it would not surprise me if the Wolves are favored in every single game they play for the rest of the season. And if they're not, they're going to be like a toss-up against Milwaukee and a toss-up against Memphis. Those are the 2 games left. They're going to beat Brooklyn. They play them twice. If they don't beat Brooklyn, well, it's just, then everybody can tear their hair out all over again because it is a pattern that has happened with this team. They should beat Philly, who was trying to tank. So those are the 3 games, and there's 2 is 5, and there's one other one left. Utah, and they have just cleaned Utah's clock, most of the time. So there is a shot at the 5 seed that wasn't there before, and it's because Memphis is free falling, and Golden State, the Lakers, and the Nuggets can be beating each other up to the point where, if you win 6 games, if you finish 50-32, that may be a 5 seed. And so then that brings up all kinds of interesting scenarios. The Wolves may prefer 6 if Denver's in 3rd, because do you want to play the Lakers with Luka and everybody happy? Do you want to play Golden State with Butler, now on that team, and Steph and Draymond?
Or if you get to the 5, then your second round series is against the 1.
There you go.
I don't know, man. I was like 3 days ago where I was just like, just the 6th seed, nothing else mattered. I'm saying, just get out of the play-in and, I guess figure it out.
But you can try too hard. All of a sudden you're in 5th.
Yeah, we'll see how they handle. I do think that they'll play it pretty straight up. I mean,
and the key, let's face it, the key is get out of the play-in. Mm-hmm. You have time to rest. You have time to figure stuff out. You know your opponent is. If you lose in the first round of the play-in, then you're playing for your life, and you turn around in 48 hours, and you're going to be playing the best team in basketball if you win. I mean, that's not ideal.
Golden State's in the 5 right now with 31 losses. Memphis has the same record as the Wolves. They're 44-32. Wolves are 44-32, and then the Clippers are 43-32. So I'm with you there too. And you're looking at the schedule ahead, and you're seeing some easy ones outside of a road game at Milwaukee and a road game against Memphis. But these other teams are, have just as much as incentive as the Wolves. I need to go double check kind of what some of their schedules the rest of the way look like. But I do think the assumption for the Wolves is they still don't have much room to let these fall away. And the Memphis one in particular is the biggest, because Memphis has the tiebreaker in that situation, even if the Wolves even if the Wolves win that.
A couple of things about that. One is Golden State plays the Lakers, I think, tonight or tomorrow night or something. It's next game up anyway.
Sure.
And so if they lose, that's 3 teams at 44 and 32. One of the things I do know from somebody on Blue Sky who responded is that although they have no tiebreaker against Golden State or the Grizzlies, I think it might be the Clippers. Anyway, what it boils down to is if there's a 3-way tie for 5, 6, 7, the Wolves win based on best division record.
Okay. Yeah, it gets weird.
And
there.
so it is.
But it's fair to bring up, because I do think we're going to get a situation 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, where a couple teams are for sure going to be tied.
And it may even be the 3. I mean, if Denver, let's say the Spurs obviously are a great opponent to have if you're going to play a back-to-back after a double overtime, but they are at home. They don't move to another city tonight. And the Spurs do allow a lot of points. Right. And so, but if Denver loses that game and the Lakers win that game, well, then all of a sudden there's a different 3 maybe. All of a sudden they're both actually, no, that means that if the Lakers beat Golden State and the Nuggets lose to the Spurs, the Lakers are the 3rd seed and the Nuggets fall to 4th. So there you go.
I'm too tired. I can't wrap my head around the math.
All I know is that the Wolves are incapable of going 9 or 10 right now. That is over with.
Right,
they will play the first play-in game, worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, it'll be on the road.
But they're probably going to play the 6. I mean, that's the more important thing there. All right, are you writing tomorrow?
I'm taking the week off because first of all, my last column was, reasons to be optimistic about the playoffs. That could be a placeholder that kind of holds. I want to make sure that I can write more than once a week in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I do think with Brooklyn and Philly as the next 2 games that I'll probably write something on Monday that'll be, with just. And then I probably won't write again until the regular season is over, which would be the following Monday, the 14th. And then I'll be in playoff mode where I might be able to do 2, sometimes 3 a week if I have to.
Love it. You guys, as always, can read Britt over at Mim Post. Appreciate you making this happen.
My pleasure.
It was a fun one.
And I will continue to live tweet games alternating between Blue Sky and Twitter. So last night was Blue Sky. The game coming up against Brooklyn will be on Twitter, and then Philly, I think is after that. That'll be Blue Sky as it goes.
He's Britt Robson. You can follow him on Twitter at Britt Robson. Follow him on Blue Sky there as well. I think the plan for us is we are not going to do a show right after the Brooklyn game because we do have the live show on Saturday. So barring something crazy, I don't think there'll be any more episodes over the weekdays this week, but we'd love to see you at Falling Knife on Saturday to probably talk about this game a little bit more with Kyle, but also whatever does go down in Brooklyn.
And also it's at Mystic. It's at the casino.
What did I say? Did I say Falling Knife? Yeah. Sorry. Good job. Come on, Brett. There you go. Good job. Treasure Island. We're at Treasure Island. It was a late game last night.
Yeah. No problem.
All right. So until Saturday with Kyle at Treasure Island, he's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.